Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is FPL Elma. We're going to be going through my Game Week 8 wildcard draft. But before we get into the video, we managed to hit 800 subscribers. So I'd like to thank you all guys for the continued support on the channel. Really been amazing. So the next goal is able to get 900 subscribers. So if you're new around here or you're a regular viewer, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit a like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to hit that bell. Don't miss any content going up on the channel. Without wasting any much time, let's get straight into it. So first, we're going to start off with the defensive and the goalkeeping department. We're going to start off with Pope from Newcastle. I think is a very good option. I think with the fixture that they're coming up and also the price of only 5.1 million, I think it's a no-brainer to go for him. But of course, there you can go for someone like Raya. You can go for someone like Sanchez. You still believe in Chelsea since they have very good fixtures coming up as well. But I think I'm going to go for Pope. They do play Brighton, Fulham, West Ham, Brentford in their next four games, so there's huge potential for clean sheets there. But I've gone for Donnarumma, but I think with Trafford in there and how Pep rotates his goalkeepers, I'd avoid that for now until we see how that's going to develop. So I think I'll have Pope in there, and I'll also have Dubravka in there as well. I think just a cheap option. And by the way, I'm tailoring this wildcard towards bench boost in game week 9. So bear that in mind as you watch the video. Also, I'm going for Dubravka against Leeds in game week 8. Then game week 9, they're going to be playing Wolves. I don't think they've kept a lot of clean sheets, but I think against Wolves, that is an ideal fixture for them to keep a clean sheet or for him to get some save points here and there. So I think Dubravka is going to be my second choice keeper, and of course, it's only 4 million, so I think he's also going to be very good to have in there. Then we go to the defense. They're going to be having Richards against Bournemouth in game week 8, and I think he has very good fixtures, and I think it's a very cheap way into getting that Crystal Palace defense. If you don't have the enough money to get to Gehi, I think Richards is a very decent option. The other options are very expensive, the likes of Gehi, Munoz, Lacroix, and Mitchell. I think are all 5 million plus, and I think Richard just offers the same, if not something similar to, if not something better compared to the others. So Richards in there. They do play Bournemouth, Arsenal, Brentford, Brighton, Wolves in their next five. So I think apart from the Arsenal fixture, maybe the Bournemouth fixture slightly, I think they're very decent to have in there with those very good fixtures. And of course, it's also offers good DEFCON points. Then the next player is Senesi, who has been a DEFCON beast in FPL so far. Good for clean sheets as well from Bournemouth. And then also he's been very good from set pieces, scoring I think one goal and getting an assist. So I think it's a decent option at 5 million. But of course, if you have short on funds and if you want a cheap way into that Bournemouth defense, I'd definitely look at Trufe playing at right back. He offers those attacking returns and also offers some few defcons here and there. Someone else I'd look at, but for now, Senesi is going to be in there. Then I've gone for Rodon as my cheap defender at only 4 million. I think he's the best 4 million defender. And the rate is now 4.1, so I think that's it's going to be very difficult to get to him. Like if you missed out on the boat when he was 4 million, so I definitely go for Rodon. And if you're going to be bench boosting in game week 9, they do play West Ham in game week 9, so I think it's also a very decent option for a bench boost with a not a big chance for clean sheet, but a very high chance of a clean sheet in that fixture. Then we have Gabriel and Timber. I've decided to go for the double up in the defense instead of going for Raya in goal. I decided to go for Gabriel and Timber. I think it's time to have both of them in there. Best defensive team in the league. They also both at threats from corners. That's why I've gone for them in there. And you're also seeing Timber booming up the pitch a little bit more, so he's high chance for attacking returns. So I think it's also a very decent option to go for Timber in there. Of course, there's Calafiori, but I think with Calafiori, there's also that slight concern that he might share minutes with Miles Lewis Kelly. That's why I've avoided him and decided to go for Gabriel and Timber in there because I think those are more locked in there. I think Saliba is also a decent option, but his injury concerns have turned me away from him, and I've gone for Gabriel and Timber instead. And then for my other consideration is Keane from Everton. I think he's I think he's a little bit better than Tarkowski at a very cheap price of 4.5 million. Then concern that people have with Keane is what happens when Braithwaite comes back from injury, because I think he's the one who's going to be sacrificed instead of Tarkowski. But I think he's also a very decent option, Defcon Beast, and he's also looked very, very good. So that's the goalkeeping department. And the defense, I think it looks pretty solid. Now let's move to the midfield. So this is how the midfield is going to be looking like. Going to be having Sarr in there against Bournemouth in game week 8, and then have very good fixtures coming up as well. But the only slight concern I have with Sarr in the team is what happens in Europe, since they're going to be playing a lot of games. But in the Conference League, I think the Conference League has fewer fixtures, so maybe it's not a very big concern. But I think it's a decent option to have him in there. The other concern I have is in game week 9, I'm going to be using my bench boost, and they're going to be playing Arsenal. So I'm not so sure if I want to have him in there as in part of my bench boost team. So it's someone I might look to change and then bring him back in game week 10, I think. But for now, he's in there. If you're not planning to use the bench boost game week 9, I think it's a decent option. Of course, he can score against Arsenal. He did score against Liverpool. So yeah, so that's sad there. And then we have Semenyo, who's been the star of FPL so far, managed to get 18 points in the last game week. Of course, he's a man on fire, and I think he's a must-have. They do play Crystal Palace in game week 8, and I think they have very good fixtures coming up as well. I think in game week 8 and game week 9 they have good game weeks coming up. Then they do play Man City, but Man City are not the same team from last season, so you definitely could score. But I think no matter the fixture, I think Semenyo is a must have in your teams. Then we have Saka playing against Fulham. I think with Saka, he's on penalties. We saw in game week 7, Jokeris was still on the pitch and Saka still took the penalty. So the team is on penalties, on corners as well. And that's not have very good fixtures coming up. They play Fulham, Crystal Palace, Burnley, and Sunderland. So I'd expect a few goals in there for him. Of course, he didn't look very good in game week 7, but he still managed to take the penalty really calmly and able to give us some points. So I hope that against Fulham and the likes of Palace, Burnley, and Sunderland, they can be able to perform and get some assists from corners to Gabriel and Timber. And then we have Caicedo. He's a very cheap, I think he's a cheap beast, Defcon points, Defcon monster. But the only question is, will he keep delivering the same points? And that's why I was looking at someone like Paqueta, who I'm sure is going to have those attacking returns. Of course, the season is not shown. He'll be able to produce those attacking returns, but I do think that West Ham have very good fixtures coming up. New manager, of course, in Nuno Espirito Santos. So I think it's a good consideration to think about, and it's something I'm definitely considering. Maybe going for Paqueta instead of Caicedo. But I think Caicedo in game week 9, he had a very good fixture against Sunderland. So if you manage to pick up some DEFCON points in that one and also score a goal, very much appreciated. Then finishing off the team, I've gone with Gordon. I think a bit of a differential, but a very expensive differential. Of course, 2.4% ownership, but he's on penalties. We saw that in the Champions League when Gordon and Walter Made, I think, were on the pitch. Gordon still took both penalties for the team. Of course, when Walter Made took his penalty, Gordon was not on the pitch in game week 7. So I think he's on penalties. As I mentioned for Nick Pope, they have very good fixtures coming up. So I expect some attacking returns in there as well. As I mentioned, it's very expensive, a very expensive differential. Maybe that's worth going for Paqueta in there, but I think I'm going to stick with Gordon at the moment. Then my other consideration is Kudus. I think he's good, very good for game week 8 and game week 9. You're falling to bench boost in game week 9. But then he has very poor fixtures from game week 10 to I think game week 11 or 12. Because they play Chelsea, United, and Arsenal in their back-to-back fixtures. They still have Europe in between those. So that's why I think I'd only have him for game week 8 and game week 9 and then sell to someone else from game week 10. So that's the midfield. It looks pretty solid, full of goals, full of assists. Now let's look at the forward line. So that's how the forward line is going to be looking like. Going to be having Haaland in there against Everton. He's just a bagsman. I think he's a must-have for no matter the fixture. He's a must-have. 9 goals and 1 assist in the first 7 game weeks. Just unbelievable numbers. Must-have in your teams. They do play Everton, who are very good defensively, but I think he's going to be able to score. Especially his goal in game week 7 was amazing. The Brentford defender did everything right, and still Haaland ended up with the ball. So I think Haaland is a must-have. Then you have Joe Pedro. Just I'm going for him just because purely of the fixtures that Chelsea have, and there are no other good attackers in that similar price range of 7 million, 7.5 million. So and Chelsea have good fixtures. They play Forest, Sunderland, Spurs, Wolves, and Burnley in their next 5 fixtures. So I definitely have Joe Pedro in there. Then, but I hope he can be able to get back his shooting boots. Then you have DCL finishing off the team. I think an unpopular pick in the FPL community over on Twitter. But I think if you're looking to to bench boost in game week 9, you'd want someone who plays in that final position. And I think DCL is a playing player. They do play West Ham in game week 9. They do play Burnley in game week 8, but I think I'm going to be benching him in game week 8 nevertheless. But I'm going to be having him in for game week 9 is as on my bench boost. But of course, that could still change and go for instead of Gordon, I go for Paqueta, and then I get in Voltemade in for DCL. I think that switch can be able to work. But for now, this is how the team is looking like. And of course, my other consideration in that forward line is going to be Bowen. I think West Ham have very good fixtures. That's why I'm slightly thinking of Paqueta. But Bowen, I think is a better pick compared to Paqueta. They do play Brentford, Leeds, Newcastle, and Burnley in the next 4 fixtures. Very winnable games, those ones. Of course, new manager bounce, of course. So I think it's a very decent option to have in there as well. And that's the team why I was using my wildcard is the team I'd go for. Looks pretty solid, especially defense with those Arsenal defenders in Gabriel and Timber. I think those are just guaranteed clean sheets if you ask me. So that's a decent team. Let me know in the comments what you think about that team. So let me show you how I'd line up for game week 8. So this is how I'd line up for game week 8. I'd have Pop in goal, Senesi, Timber, and Gabriel in the defensive line. Then I have Saka, Sar, Caicedo, Gordon, and Semenyo in the midfield. And then Haaland and Joe Pedro finishing off the team in the attack. Then have Dubravka, Richards, DCL, and Rodon on the bench. That team looks pretty solid if you ask me, and also looks very, very good for bench boost in game week 9, apart from having Sar and Richards in there since they're going to be playing Arsenal. I think that's the only concern I do have. But I think that's still a very, very good team for game week 8 and a very good team for bench boost 9. So let me know down in the comments what you think about the wildcard. Let me know what you've changed. And if you want to ask me any questions, you can ask me in the comments or you can ask me on my socials. Links are down in the description. It's another long video. If you managed to reach this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you all guys later. Bye bye.